But all I want to do is make a deeper connection with some earth.
Hello and welcome to my 39th free online permaculture masterclass. I really encourage you not to miss this one. My name is Morag and I'm from the Permaculture Education Institute. And today our focus is Permaculture Artivism. I'm thrilled to be joined here today by the dynamic duo, my Western Australian friends, illustrator Brenna Quinlan and musician Charlie McGee. Both of them are permaculture activists, creatives, educators, and practitioners. So make sure to follow on the links below to subscribe to our Masterclass Club, and that way you can receive notice of upcoming events for all of our monthly masterclasses. And also a special welcome to all of you who are here as part of the Permaculture Educators program. These sessions are always a source of so much inspiration for our work together and becoming fabulous permaculture educators around the world. So let's begin. First up is an original song performed live by Charlie. So enjoy, sit back and be part of this session. Feel free to pop your chat questions below, and thanks so much for being here.
A simple piece of ground, been talking about it till my mouth is dumb, but all I want to do is make a deeper connection with some earth people fair. Yeah, I've been looking for my earth people fair, yeah. Well, show me where to find the earth people fair, yeah, yeah, yeah. A stray alien wandering this ancient land, so much of the dream that I still don't understand. Been looking at you, but I'd rather see you and follow the path of that old dark emu. Someday my body's gonna breathe its last, yeah, I'm aware that this too shall pass. But till then, I'll keep singing to the open air, hoping there's time to advance earth people fair. Earth people fair, hey yeah, get together with the earth people fair, yeah. Well, let me hear it from my earth people fair. Hey, yeah, 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 yeah. Bit of opening music for you there. That was called Earth People Fair.
Thank you, Charlie.
Earth People Fair.
Can you pop in the link too, Charlie, where people can get that from? So if you just want to drop that in, and we'll make sure too that we share that with the follow-up recording. So just to let everyone know that this session is being recorded, and it's an absolute delight to welcome all of you here to this really special masterclass session. And what a way to begin this topic around permaculture artivism. So really looking at how can art be this really powerful force of positive, practical activism that merged with permaculture can help to bring positive ripples and myceliate positive change around the world. And so what better guest to talk about this than Brenna Quinlan, permaculture illustrator, who you have most likely seen, well, her work is behind her, and you can also see all her work in things like Costa Georgiades' new book, the Retro Suburbia book, and so many other places. And I'm sure if any of you are here doing the permaculture course with me, you would have heard lots of Charlie's songs as well already, and all throughout the airways. Charlie McGee is part of the Formidable Vegetable Sound System, and together Charlie and Brenna are part of Grow Do It, which is this wonderful permaculture education initiative that I'm sure we're going to hear more about while we're here. So, but before I do go on, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm seated with you today. I'm here on the land of the Gubbi Gubbi, and I am not far from the banks of the Mukabulla River, otherwise known as the Mary River, which is a raging torrent recently, like just massive flash floods. I went for a walk down the Mukabulla the other day, and it was so amazing just to see how it had cleaned out and changed. And I wondered where the platypus have gone, though. I was looking and I don't know where they went. And what do platypus do in a flood? That's my next investigation down the Mukabulla. And I know that often when we have these sessions, I encourage you if you know the traditional custodians of the land in which you're seated today, to pop it in the chat. And also feel free to pop questions in the chat all the way through. I'm going to be trying to keep an eye on that. We also have Maya, my daughter, who runs the Perma Youth. She's here as well in the background. She's going to help us keep an eye on that. And so what I thought we might do in terms of a starting point was have a bit of a chat with Brenna and, with Brenna and Charlie. Sorry. You might all know that I'm a little bit discombobulated at this present moment because I had a major crash of our system just before this started. So I'm actually so glad to see so many of you here. So anyway, we'll have a bit of a chat first, and then we would love to open it up to you all to ask whatever questions you have, to share ideas, and to make this like a really beautiful space to explore what activism and art and permaculture means when it's all woven together beautifully. So welcome to the show, and thank you so much for joining. It's lovely to have you here.
So lovely to be here, Morag, and oh wow, so many people. Isn't this fantastic? So exciting.
So where are you calling in from, Brenna? Do you want to just give us a bit of a rundown on the country that you're in and also the community that you're in?
Yeah. So we're coming from Pibulma Manang Budja, which means country, over here in southwestern WA in a town also known as Denmark. And Charlie and I actually live here together, but we're in separate rooms for tonight because he's very noisy and I feel a bit weird sitting on the side of the screen while he's singing his songs, just bopping along. And we live in an intentional permaculture community. So our bylaws, it's actually written in the structure that holds this community that we practice permaculture. We live our lives by the permaculture ethics, and we endeavour to build our buildings in a way that's ecologically responsible. We're encouraged to grow food. We use compost toilets and collect rainwater. So all that sort of exciting stuff is actually in the legal framework of our new home. We spent the whole day in a great community meeting, so we're ready and raring to go as far as community goes.
And you're building a new home for yourselves, and it's a straw bale house, is that right? How's that going? Where are you up to at the moment?
Yeah, that's it. So we've been here for a year. The structure of this community is that there are 18 lots of a quarter acre in size each. So 18 people own the 18 lots, and you can do whatever you like on that lot within the confines of the permaculture ethics. And then there's a whole bunch of common land, including 44 acres of forest and a whole bunch of paddocks and, patches and like a village green and a community centre where we're calling you from tonight. So on our lot, we're building a little straw bale house, and we've got a south-facing slope, which in the Southern Hemisphere in Australia means that we're at risk of having quite not much sun going on in winter. So we've been doing a lot of terracing, a lot of earthworks to really work with that challenge and turn it into a positive. And so we've got loads of that done, but we haven't started building the house yet, but some bush pole frames are going up, which is quite exciting. And in the year that we've been here, we've also been working on the common land adjacent to our block. So there's a half acre there, also a south-facing slope. We've been doing earthworks, and we've made all of these beautiful ponds and then little channels for the water to trickle in between or rush in between, as it will be in winter, and then another pond and another pond. And it's amazing when you start capturing and storing water on your block, the amount of life that returns to a site almost overnight is just incredible. So we've got frogs, there's dragonflies there's all different kinds of plants popping up. There's wood ducks hanging out on the pond now, and native bees. We've seen a whole lot of native bees nesting in the clay and the walls near the pond. So you can really see that regeneration starting to take place so early in the game. It's been such an exciting thing to watch.
Isn't it amazing how it doesn't take that much, does it, to shift towards a regenerative way, and we know too with the whole rebuilding of soil, we know how quickly we can erode it, but we can actually really quickly regenerate it too. And so it's wonderful to hear that. And I know that you've also got a YouTube channel kind of tracking your progress there. Do you want to tell us a bit about what you're sharing over there and how people can find and follow you in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so when we started this adventure to build our place, a lot of people said, all right, but we want to see what you're doing. So we started a YouTube channel on our YouTube site's called Grow Do It. We've also got a website and all the socials as well. So if you're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, look up Grow Do It there. And we're sharing short videos of our progress. So if you have ever wanted to watch an artist and musician bumble their way through building a house and designing and installing food forests and market gardens and all of the things, as well as the community aspects as well. Lots of things go wrong, some things go right, but we're smiling all the way through. So that's what the Grow Do It YouTube channel is all about. Just
before I got on, I had a look at your one with your tank, and I just thought that was beautiful. Explain, but it's funny. Your videos are funny, but they're also incredibly informative. You're talking about the overflow and how that all works, and looking at your ponds and the systems in process. So yeah, I really encourage anyone who's interested in seeing permaculture in process and it evolving and emerging and what happens. Fantastic. So maybe, you've both been in it for a really long time, and you've probably been asked this a whole lot of times, but why permaculture? Before we get into the whole kind of activism thing, why permaculture? What drew you to it, and what have been the biggest changes that you've felt in your life since taking that on?
Did you want to answer that first, Charlie?
Yeah. Well, I guess maybe Brenna and I have slightly different reasons for becoming part of the permaculture movement, and I feel really lucky and privileged to have grown up in the bush, out of town, on an off-grid sort of farm piece of land that my dad bought when I was really little, and he wanted to give us kids the kind of upbringing that that he had, I suppose, where he had plenty of space to run around and plenty of bush and freedom, and he wanted to teach us to care for the earth and to live in community. And I was actually raised before that in Indigenous communities up in the Northern Territory of Australia. So we lived in Aboriginal communities until I was 4. And that was a great experience of just living in a village with plenty of people, and I'd run around freely and hang out with kids and come back for dinner or food, but it was very much just a community setting. And when we moved down south, there wasn't so much of that, but he did have this piece of land, and we set up veggie gardens and chickens and composting toilets, because there was no services like running water or on-grid power or anything like that. He couldn't afford to put on power, so eventually he bought one solar panel, which was enough to power one light and a radio. So the only entertainment I had growing up was ABC Radio National with Norman Swan, and don't we love him these days? But my entertainment coming home from school was to hang out with the chickens and to run around outside with my sister and make up games and go up to the forest and build tree houses. And that was a really special way to be able to have that freedom as a kid, which sadly isn't very common in our culture at the moment in the West. So through that, I started to hear Dad talk about permaculture, and he had a few books that he'd lie around on the coffee tables, and I'd flip through them and see the pictures, and it was the pictures and the art that drew me in. So the early permaculture books written by Bill Mollison and David Holmgren, had some technical drawings and pictures of how to design different garden systems or chicken systems or water systems. And I remember flipping through them, and it really captured my imagination, and I thought, wow, this is cool. This is an interesting way to have a chicken yard. And I was really interested in chickens because I loved my chooks. But I was like, wow, you can integrate them with a garden, and they can dig up the soil and you can grow food. And it got me thinking. But it was the art that drew me in. And later on, when I moved to the city and began to experience, I guess, mainstream Australian culture, I realized how much waste we create in our everyday lives, especially in the city, and how much people throw away and how much people don't get to interact with the natural environment as much. And I just started coming back to this idea of permaculture. Something in my brain was just ringing permaculture. Find out more about this thing. And eventually, after 2008, when, as some of us know, there was a big financial crash and a lot of people with a lot of money lost a lot of money. I didn't have any money, so I didn't lose a lot of money, but I saw the world change quite a bit. And I thought, wow, maybe now's the time to start learning some of these skills, because it feels like the way I grew up is the way that I want to keep living. And that's what brought me to permaculture. But then the music came later. But maybe, Brenna, you want to talk a bit about your journey towards discovering it? I think it's maybe a little bit different.
Yeah, so I left Australia in my early 20s with the goal of discovering some sort of meaning. I guess I was exhibiting art. I was a practicing artist. I was looking for work in journalism, which is what I was trained in, and not really feeling like what I was doing was enough. So I ended up traveling through the Americas for 6 years. A big chunk of that was on a bicycle so that I could avoid flying. I actually went all the way from Canada across the United States and through all of the countries in Central America on a bicycle over the course of a year. And during that trip, I started, we were camping and doing a bit of volunteering, and I was meeting all of these people who were living really fascinating lives. And the common thread through the best places that I stayed was that the people there were talking about permaculture. And I didn't know what permaculture was, but an image started to form. After the bicycle trip, I spent 2 years volunteering, woofing in different projects. And again, the people who seemed to have it all together, the people who were really living their best life, were the ones that were talking about permaculture. So I thought, okay, I've got to do a course in this and figure out what they're actually saying. And I booked in to do my permaculture design course, which took the form of a 2-week-long residential course down in the south of Chile at Il Manzano. And after that, got together with a group of 15 people from all over South and Central America. I was a token bringer, and we started teaching permaculture. We settled down in a place that had a couple of houses. We started building another one with natural construction, a straw bower house. We were growing food, and we'd live there in the summer. We did that for 2 years. And in the winter, we'd go over to Brazil, Argentina. Our home base was in Chile and Argentina, Uruguay, and we'd teach courses in natural construction and permaculture. So that was really my baptism of fire in learning about all these sorts of things. And it was fascinating to see how the places I was volunteering, some places were really great. Maybe we were picking coffee beans on an organic coffee farm, but then they'd be feeding us just, whatever trashy food from the supermarket or something, or maybe they weren't treating their work as well, or there was always something missing. But the permaculture places, because they were thinking about earth care, people care, and fair share, they really seemed to have that holistic view of things. And so that really appealed to me. There's some big issues in our time going on in the background there and in the foreground as well, increasingly. And permaculture to me offered not only solutions to those issues, but a conversation around them that was really sensible. So then I came back to Australia after those 6 years away and said, how do I continue this journey? Oh, David Holmgren's doing his thing. He's the co-originator of the Permaculture Concert, one of two. Bill Mollison's the other one. Dave Holmgren's going great in central Victoria. So I went and knocked on his door and said, hey, can I intern with you, please? And then 4 years later, after I'd learned a whole bunch of stuff, that's when we decided to move over here to Western Australia and start doing our own thing. So yeah, it's been an exciting journey. It definitely changed the course of my life.
It just sounds like the most amazing journey. Like what a story, Brenna.
Mm.
Wow. I didn't know half of that stuff about what you'd done before. That's amazing.
And it was like permaculture propelled me to keep cycling. I'm not one of those exerciser peoples. I love rainy days and drawing inside with a cup of hot chocolate. But the excitement of really discovering that there are people out there who are living by their morals as well was so important to me. And ever since I discovered that, I've sought that out. So living at David Holmgren's place was obviously a fantastic experience because they live deeply by their permaculture ethics and principles. And now that we're here in this intentional community too, we're surrounded by people doing the same thing. So that really, I guess, energizes me to keep going with my forms of activism too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's that kind of, that sense of creating spaces where it just is natural, like what you talked about, Charlie, like it just is a normal thing. And then also, you know, what you're talking about is this following your heart and following what you know feels like it makes sense. And so those two things coming together just seem to be, you know, like really resonating with what I can imagine a lot of people are going, you know, I can see a lot of people nodding in the audience, you know. And so I wanted to then ask you about your art and your music and how, like, I know it plays a big part in what you're doing, but how did it become such a huge part of your permaculture lives? And how do you feel that it enables you to be able to speak out and be educators in permaculture in ways that are different from like the kind of the courses that you might have been teaching before?
Shall I go, Charlie?
Yeah.
You know, it was interesting after those 6 years overseas, when I was interning at Dave Holmgren's place, I did have the question going round and round in my head of when does being the intern translate into something else? Like, when do I stop volunteering? I know we're always learning, but I guess when do I sink into something that's mine, a career, a pathway, my own form of activism, as opposed to supporting other people in theirs? And it was 4 months into my internship that David asked if I would illustrate his book Retro Suburbia, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's like the guide to how to live regeneratively in the cities and suburbs. It's a really exciting book. And so, of course, I said yes, but that was the first time that I had really considered illustration as an option. Before that, I'd been an artist, and the goal as an artist is to get your art hung in galleries and sold to wealthy people and make a living that way. And it just wasn't resonating with me. It didn't seem like enough, considering the climate crisis, humanitarian crisis, the social justice issues we're facing, the biodiversity loss. I needed to do something more. So illustration just fell out of the sky and landed in my lap in the form of David Holmgren's book. And I realised that I could marry my passion for permaculture and holistic thinking with my obsession with drawing and creating. And the other thing that illustration allows me to do is to help to convey information in an accessible way, which is something that drew me to studying journalism in the past too. So it almost brought the three passions of my life together. And since then, it's absolutely taken off. It was like the world was ready for that niche, to have more visuals around the big issues. And I was lucky enough to stumble into that. So like Morag said, I've done a bunch of books. I've worked with Milkwood Permaculture a lot. They were living at Dave Holmgren's place for a few years as well. I also I do client work for, like, if a council has a net zero by 2030 plan that they want to show people, oh yeah, they can say it all in a big 100-page document, but no one's going to read that. They want to show people and put it up on a bus stop somewhere in the city and say, this is what we're aiming for. They get in touch with me. I have academics who are doing fantastic work with local food systems, and they're bringing people together to brainstorm ideas to encourage behaviour around actual hands-on activism. They want to record these workshops that they're doing. They want to show the results of their research. So they're the sorts of people that would come to me. So it's really exciting. It means I get to work with people who are also living their activism, who are doing their thing about their topic of interest in a way that's sustainable for them over the long term. And so we kind of share energy about how great that is, to be making the world a better place in those ways together. And then the other way that I do this sort of stuff is by releasing art as activism. I call it online. A few times a week I'll release a new drawing, and that takes on a life of its own. And we'll have a chance to have a look at those in a little bit, maybe after Charlie's had a yarn about his form. But I guess the key thing for me is, yes, we all have to step up and do something. We all have to be activists in some way, but that doesn't necessarily mean chaining yourself to a tree in the forest. It doesn't necessarily even mean showing up to protests, although they're a really fun, regenerative way to meet a whole bunch of people who are thinking the same as you on climate change or some of the big issues. It can mean that you release your art to the world with a message. It can mean that you're bringing those messages to the kids at the school that you teach at, or to the kids in your family. It can mean it's for it to be sustainable over the long term. It's got to be something that really brings you joy. So art brings me joy. Great. That's one of my forms of activism. Over to you, Charlie.
Just before you jump in, sorry, Charlie, I just wanted to say there's something about, though, your drawings in terms of them being a form of activism, that they feel so warm. You know, there's a warmth and a kindness and an accessibility to it that attracts people, I suppose. And that, I think, is like the real, like something that you've, like you said, you've brought all these different things together, and here it is. And that's where the change happens, where people aren't scared away, but they're drawn into the conversation to have around. And I think that's something that's incredibly amazing with what you're doing. Yeah. Sorry, over to you, Charlie.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And Brenna's got this beautiful knack of just communicating complicated ideas, complex ideas in just one image, and it just really hits you, and you're like, oh, yes, of course. It's something I really love about her work. And, you know, it's true. Like, activism comes in many forms. And I heard this interview on the ABC the other day with a woman from Brazil who's very involved in environmental issues. But in some countries, it's dangerous to call yourself an activist. And she was very involved in trying to bring about cultural change and help Indigenous people to, you know, reclaim land that was being taken over by mining companies and yada yada. But she was saying, I don't identify as an activist, but what I do is activism. So the fact that we can have art and music and education as agents for change means that we don't have to identify as activists. We don't have to say, I am an activist and I get out and do activism. We can do forms of activism through everything that we do. And the thing that I loved about permaculture when I did my course was the realization that I could use the skills I already had, which for me was playing music, and still make change. And some people have referred to permaculture as the revolution disguised as gardening, because for most people, gardening is something very non-threatening. It's something, oh, well, that's just something you do in your backyard, and that's something that couldn't possibly change the world. But with the thing that makes permaculture so cool is that when you have a movement of people who are just gardening but actually talking about changing the system, then you start to build that momentum, which changes the way we think collectively. And I think the power of art and music is that it also does that. So by combining art and permaculture and music and permaculture, it gives us a way to come together and feel like we're part of something. You know, a lot of it is about forming community and feeling like we're a part of something bigger than ourselves. And music especially has a great power to do that. If you've ever been to a live concert or you've sung along to your favorite song with your friends, you know, it hits you on an emotional level. It really taps into the glue that connects us all. And for me, the thing that I got out of my course was that I could use this skill to actually promote these ideas that I think lead to a regenerative world. You know, the principles and ethics of permaculture: earth care, people care, fair share, and the 12 principles, which I wrote an album about. And so that just, for me, took that extra step of you know, using this medium of music, which helps people to feel good and have a dance and feel connected and feel part of a community, to on the ground action in our communities and in the world, to actually spread a very powerful tool for change. And right now, you know, we need these tools for change. We can see so many things happening in the world that just are degenerative and actually making things harder for a lot of people. But if we can get together and mobilize with art, with music, with community, then I think we can change that to a regenerative system. And it's kind of like going under the radar, you know. The arts is just something that everybody enjoys, everyone supports, everyone likes, you know, looking at beautiful images, everyone likes listening to good songs. And through bringing that message, we can really kind of amplify that in a way that's not activism as such.
Yeah. And so your music has taken you to some quite extraordinary places. Do you want to just share like a little bit about where you've been able to perform these permaculture songs? I mean, wow, Charlie.
Well, it hasn't been many places in the last 2 years.
No, I know.
The world kind of shut down. But before that, I was touring way too much. I kind of just went for it when I wrote the first album, which is based on David Holmgren's 12 principles. So I took each of the permaculture principles and made them into a song. And I thought, well, if this book is so great, you know, why can't we get it out there to even more people? And I thought, you know what, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get this out to as many people as I can. I'm going to try and become a permaculture rock star. And so I was very lucky in getting onto the bill of some very big international festivals, and we went to the UK and played Glastonbury 3 times, and the US and Canada and India and Iceland and Malta, and like we toured to over 20 countries over 7 years. And I was kind of grateful when COVID kind of stopped everything, because I was on the point of burnout. But I'd actually stopped flying the year before because I thought, you know, I've done enough of these carbon miles. I need to reduce my ecological footprint. But before that, I was really on the mission to just get out and use the tool of music festivals and mass media, radio, social media, which I used to be a really active participant in, not so much anymore. But to just use it, make hay while the sun shines, and get the music out there. And it was pretty remarkable, because I remember the first time we arrived at Glastonbury. If you've never heard of Glastonbury before, it was one of the biggest music festivals in the world. Over 250,000 people camping for 6 days in a muddy field in England. Sounds great. But they have all kinds of huge bands. Pretty much every band that you've ever heard of has probably played there. Dolly Parton played there, and the Rolling Stones, and you know, Ed Sheeran when we were there. But the fact that we can get that music and that message in front of such a huge audience was pretty amazing. And I remember rocking up and getting on stage for the first time, being like, oh my God, like, how's this going to go down? Well, I have a ukulele and some songs about permaculture, and these people are here to like rock out to hip hop or something. Like, are they going to just hate us? And we got up and we played our tunes and we put on some fat dancey beats. And at the end, people were coming up and saying, that was awesome. Whoa, I've never thought about like growing a garden before, or like, you know, having chickens, or like the planet, and, you know, recycling and stuff. And just people's minds shifted a little bit. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. Like, people who had come to just get away from their life, not actually to face the world's issues, were coming and saying, actually, now I'm thinking about the world's issues and I'm having a great time. So that was a bit of an aha moment and a real win for me.
Yeah, and your music is just so lively and so accessible. And, you know, I've also, it's very accessible for young people too. I've been in so many cars full of kids going to places with just your music, like my dad's done it, doesn't flush, like going on and on and on. Like, you know, they know all your songs, you know. And this is the brilliant thing, because you can actually go into a school, you can go into any kind of community group, and with your music, very clearly introduce what permaculture is about. And that helps so much. So thank you for taking the time to do it. And I remember you saying right in the early days, you were kind of making the songs to begin with to help you process what it all meant. And in that process came up with these really great ways of expressing it. And it's worked. Yeah.
Well, so that's the other thing, is that music traditionally in a lot of cultures has been the way we learn. You know, people gather in the village and they sing songs and they build houses and they, you know, make gardens, and that's a part of everyday life. But where I grew up and where I live, that doesn't happen. And I thought, why doesn't it happen? Like, this is such a powerful tool, you know, to bring us together and to get us to sing our culture. Like, I mean, I think it's a lot. It's a very common thing in Indigenous cultures, and I think we've lost that in the Western world. And so, yeah, to bring back this tool is just something, you know, that is creating a permanent culture. Like, we can remember things through song, we can learn things through song, and we can teach our children through song. And a large part of what I'm doing now is trying to write more kids' songs, like Dad's Dunny, you know, that helps, really gets in people's heads, and they want to sing along, and they want to share it with their friends, so that we can create that communal culture of singing and songwriting, and, you know, writing your own songs. Like, if you want to remember something, write a song about it. It works.
Mm. Mm. Wow. Brenna, did you want to share some of you? Have you got something ready that you can screen share to show us some of your work, and maybe talk through a little bit about how it is that you find the voice, like, you know, like Charlie said, like you really are able to come right down into the pointy end of the essence of a topic and share it in a way that just lands, you know, like just makes sense. And it's like an aha every time you see your work. It's like another little aha. It's like, oh, and it's so shareable because of that, because it's like, oh, that's what I really wanted to say. Look, I'm just going to share that one because that's kind of said it, and I don't need to, you know, all the words that I would have to explain it. That just does it. So do you want to just talk us through a bit of some of your work, if that's possible, and you know, maybe even some of the way that you've used it in your educational tools too?
Yeah, sure thing, Morag. I won't claim full credit for my works. I say that creativity blows through on the breeze, and then sometimes you're in the way and it gets in your mind, and if you're not ready for it, it'll keep going and find somebody else. And if you can grab hold of it and write it down and bring it to life, then you get all the credit for it, but it wasn't really you in the first place. So that's the way I look at it. But yeah, I'll do a screen share and I can show you a few of these drawings that we're talking about. Do these ones first. So see that okay? I've brought together a few of my permaculture ones. Sometimes people call me the permaculture illustrator, and I do talk about permaculture a lot in my art, but that's one theme of many. But I thought today it would be appropriate to show a few of the ones with a permaculture theme. So this is an example of taking something that was quite complex. This was an article published in Permaculture magazine in 2015, and it was summarising a meeting that took place at the North American Permaculture Convergence back in 2014 about how we can make permaculture even better and more accessible to more people. And it was a really interesting article. The group at that Permaculture Convergence produced some really interesting themes, and I thought, how can I share this with a bigger audience, because it's a topical conversation now in 2022. It's very topical in 2020 as well. And maybe people don't remember that this happened. So to breathe new life into it and bring it into a drawing, we've got great ideas like having sign language and interpreters as needed in our permaculture work, using inclusive language, designating safe spaces. So having this kind of central heading, and then painting the picture of the heading, giving examples around the heading, is a technique that I use a lot to really delve into an issue. Here we've got the 3 ethics of permaculture. Sometimes, you know, people tend to think, oh, permaculture is gardening, or permaculture is, in South America, natural construction, and put permaculture in quite a small box. If we remember our ethics, or remember that it's based on principles, also that it's based on design, you know, we can start helping people to see that it's much more even than what they assume that it is. So that was my idea behind this work, and really encouraging also people to, I guess, take the next step. Earth care is earth care. In this image, they're planting trees, but the people are also outside. They're having a good time. They might be planting trees that they have grown. So earth care, people care, and fair share have a lot of overlap between. And each one of these images, you see the image for people care, oh, there's people at a community garden. Oh, community garden. We might think of that as earth care. It's also because they're planting things, but it's also people care, because the main yield, the main harvest from community gardens isn't necessarily the salad. It's bringing people together. It's also an excellent symbol of fair share, because that food is planted there for other people to use, for other people to harvest, to build resilience in our communities. So this was one of the ideas of how I kind of paint a picture around an image, literally paint a picture and figuratively around a theme. This is an example of how I use humour in my images. So it's a take on the song by Beyonce, All the Single Ladies. If you liked it, then you should have put a fence on it. Buck, 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 buck. And just celebrating chickens. I don't want to say through my images, hey, everyone should have gardens and everyone should have chickens because that's a better way to live. Firstly, it's not for everybody. And secondly, messaging like that is proven to turn people off. People don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to feel judged. They don't want to hear more statistics about how bad things are. What really works with communication around climate change, around social justice, around the big issues of our time is messaging that is fun and engaging. So using humour is a really excellent way to get around that. And I tell you, this image has been supremely popular, and I've never printed it out as a poster, and I get requests for it all the time. Can you see the top of that text in the screen share, Morag?
Yeah.
Okay, great. This is an example of taking a quote, this fantastic quote by Rob Hopkins from his book, From What Is to What If, just stood out for me. So when I'm reading books, when I'm listening to podcasts, if I'm watching something like this evening tonight, watching a documentary, I'm always writing down notes. If something makes my heart sing, I think, oh, I've got the opportunity to share that with other people. And, you know, we've all felt that moment when something that somebody says really lands with us. So for me, this quote landed as well. And I thought, okay, how can I show it in a way that's kind of funny and that brings more meaning to the quote? So I can't see the top of it. If we act as, if we wait for government, it will be too late?
Yep.
Something like that. If we act as individuals, it will be too little. And if we act as communities, it might just be enough. So if we act as individuals, you've got your permaculture level 5 super permy there, standing there, holding a radish and marveling at its beauty while the world collapses around them. And we're saying, hey, we're remembering our fair share ethic. We're remembering to think outside of our own home and to actually get out there and not just make our world a better place, but make our world a better place. People love this image. So there's something in there that when it resonates for me and makes my heart do that little somersault, often it does the same thing for other people. This is an example of an illustration technique that I use called visual metaphor. So it's explaining a really complex issue. How does privilege work? And it's an issue that evokes a lot of emotion in people and also a lot of confusion in people. And a lot of people are talking about this image but don't really know how to express that, how to there's teachers, there's family members, there's people saying, yeah, there's this thing called privilege, but it's really complicated, just go and read 10 books. And their uncle at Christmas is saying, I'm probably not going to do that. So I tried to create an image that served as a tool for helping to get this complex issue out there. And we can see if you have more balloons, i.e. more privilege, it's easier to get to the top of the hill with less effort. And people with less balloons have a tougher time getting up the same hill. And again, using characters that are accessible, using their faces are expressive. We can look at that image and say, I understand what's going on. There's color there. There are all these visual techniques that have been proven to draw our eyeballs in and maintain our attention for longer than if, say, we were looking at a big page of text. Or the techniques that I'm using, the color, the cheeky little characters have all been intentionally chosen to really fulfill the purpose of getting that work out there, getting people to feel engaged with it. So there's that one. And what I just wanted to show, somebody asked in the chat, are we doing translations? And there's actually a Ukrainian group who I've been talking to in the last few weeks. They translated a bunch of my work a couple of years ago to help in their teaching of permaculture. And now the question is, wow, okay, now that they're really doing it tough, how do we help them? So we've done a whole bunch of illustrations into about 12 different languages with my works. People volunteer their time for this because I'm a one-person show and currently don't have the budget. I hope one day I will have the budget to pay people well. But people are doing it because it's useful for them to use in their education, or it's useful for them to get permaculture out there to people in their language. There are so many permaculture resources in English, and even in Spanish, where I did my permaculture course, there is hardly anything. So it's great when someone steps up and says, yep, I want these 5 for my course. I'm going to translate them into German and Spanish. Let's go, and I'll facilitate that. So if you're out there looking for more illustration resources, let me know. And I know that Charlie has also been working on some translations with his work recently too.
Before we jump into Charlie, sorry, I keep interrupting you, Charlie. Thank you, Brenna. That was absolutely brilliant way of explaining the kind of the backstory to how your art works and you know the different, what are the different parts of it, and thank you for that. I wanted also to just dive in there too, because there has been conversation, and I can see Julie sitting up there on the top at the moment. There's been conversation with you and a group of people within the Permaculture Educators program at the moment, and there's been volunteers from, I don't know, at least over a dozen different languages who would love at the moment to get together and do this translation work of this. So what we're hearing is exactly what you're saying, that this kind of expression of permaculture in this joyful, humorous way, like there's a lightness to it, but it's definitely not lightweight. And before you jump in, Charlie, I just wanted to ask Brenna about that, because there's something about, you know, it's friendly, it's light, it's happy, it's fun, but there's something very deep and serious about this at the same time, but just not presented as heavy. So can you maybe just talk just a little bit about that?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work on finding out what effective communication really is, and there are some great studies on this. In the 80s, it was all, let's throw more information at people around climate change and changing light bulbs, and that'll help. And, you know, we've a few decades later, we've seen what doesn't really work on a societal level. I'll show one more cheeky little quick image. This didn't show up before. The Trump face wasn't me. That was someone taking my work and making a meme out of it. But we've got how to compost the rich in 3 easy steps. Gather your materials, layer carbon with nitrogen, add water, wait a while, distribute, see what grows. So there's big discussions around inequality in our world at the moment. People have got insanely rich off the COVID situation. The rich keep getting richer. Social media moguls are, you know, ruling our lives at the moment. And most of us keep getting poorer. So that's not a great situation. But your average person is aware that that's the situation. We don't want to underestimate people's intelligence and people's engagement in the issues, and also people's gut feelings about issues. People, even if they haven't read all the books on a subject, know what's going on. So how do we name the issue, bring it forward in the forefront of our minds in a way that's safe and not depressing? And that's, for me, where humour is one of those tools. Metaphor is one of those tools. So every issue that I want to talk about, every quote that I want to illustrate, every theme and idea that I have in my mind, I think, what is the best way to do that to achieve the outcome of people feeling motivated and connected? And I tell you, there's a lot of drafts I do that never see the light of day because they don't tick those boxes. They're too preachy, they're too in your face. And so I'm very happy to get rid of them. I only want things that really make people say, yes, I'm going to step up today. that's an issue that I can be passionate about, and I've got something to bring to the table.
Thanks, Brenna. And you're doing translations too, Charlie. Do you want to tell us about what's going on in your music space?
Yep, we're starting a project through the iPen group based in the UK to translate the Permaculture album into as many languages as possible. But we're starting with Spanish. So I'm singing, I'm getting translations from a band in Colombia who translated from a Permi in Argentina, and I'm singing in Espanol, which I don't speak very well, and actually re-recording the songs. So we're actually putting it out there for anyone who wants to be a part of this project to translate the songs into your language. And who knows, maybe I can, sing in Swahili or Dutch or Icelandic or something if if anyone's keen. It's very much a grassroots exercise, so it is taking a while to do, but I think ultimately, translating this stuff will mean that we can communicate permaculture in a lot more, a lot of different places. And just on that note that you were talking about, Brenna, I think it's a real skill to be able to communicate about heavy things in a lighthearted way. And we are in such a heavy time in a lot of ways. And but I think that's part of, just looking at that picture about composting. I think a lot of it can be thought about. I mean, I think everything can be thought about in terms of composting. Compost is such a wonderful metaphor for life. It's breaking down old things and bringing them into the new. It's regeneration. It's taking the yucky, bad, stinky, smelly, horrible stuff and turning it into beautiful, fertile, abundant, nourishing stuff. And for me, I like to think about that when I'm writing songs, especially if it's about something that's a little bit heavy. And I don't know if you want me to share another song.
Please do. Yeah, please do. And then maybe after that we might go ask people to jump in if they've got any questions that they'd like to.
Yeah, for sure. I have been answering a few of the questions.
I noticed that. Thank you so much. When I'm talking to you, I can only focus on you. I can't do that and type and read at the same time. Otherwise, I just lose the plot. So thank you so much for jumping in.
So, something that I've tried to do a little bit, and in this song, it's probably my best example is to take something that's a bit sad and a bit heavy and to turn it into something a bit lighthearted. And I think, if you're feeling sad or if you're feeling heavy, it's okay to feel that. It's okay to feel the sadness of the world. And, if something's happened, if your town's been flooded or your, house is burnt down, then of course you need to feel sad. And when things are happening in the world like they are, we need to feel that. But then with music, the thing that I love about music is it can connect us to actually go and do something to make it better. So this song is a little one that I wrote a few years ago for the late Bill Mollison, who, as you may know, started the permaculture movement with David Holmgren. He wrote the first book. And he was very much the charismatic, leader who went around the world and spread it all over the place and told everyone about this wonderful thing called permaculture. But in one of his documentaries that I watched, he was talking about trees and how they cycle nutrients and they pump water and they do all these wonderful things for the forest. And he was talking about how they just eat all the dead matter in the forest and recycle them into beautiful oxygen and air for us to breathe. And then at one point he looks at the camera and he goes, you know what? They'll eat you in the end as well. And I thought, that's such a great idea for a song. So after he passed away, before he passed away, he asked everyone he knew to plant a tree in his memory. And when he passed, millions of people around the world who'd known about his work and who were into permaculture planted a tree or multiple trees or an entire food forest for Bill. And so I wrote this song. I wrote this musical tree to celebrate his life, but also to feel that sadness a little bit as well. It's called Trees Eat Us All. Designer, you're now a recliner. So long and thanks for the yield. And your tools left behind have all sharpened our minds to keep growing the change in the field. Well, the future is looking quite shady. under all the ideas that you've grown. And to look out the window at food in the ground gives us power to face the unknown. But trees eat us all in the end, so plant one for me when I'm gone. Then if you hear that I've died, you can tell them they've lied. I'm just shading out somebody's lawn. Tapping into the rhizomes of wisdom, you wove them all into a tale. And with seeds in your pockets and dirt on your hands, you took us in to the belly of the whale. Took us into the belly of the whale. So go on and tell us another, 'cause your stories are food for the soul, helping us to see the forest for the trees and ourselves as a part of the whole. See ourselves as a part of the whole. So trees eat us all in the end, so plant one for me when I'm gone. Then if you hear that I've died, you can tell them they've lied. I'm just shading out somebody's lawn. Now the problems around us are many, but the answers come to us with ease. Take care of the land, your friends and your family, and remember to plant lots of trees. Yeah, well, trees eat us all in the end, so plant one for me when I'm gone. Then if you hear that I've died, you can tell them they've lied. I'm just shading out somebody's lawn. That one's for Bill. And it's one of the last songs on our album, Earth People Fair, which is all about the permaculture ethics. And I thought it was a nice little eulogy to go out on. But yeah, thanks heaps for listening.
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Brenna. But I don't want you to go yet, because I think that there might be some questions that, and at this point, I know that we're almost to the hour. If you're able to stick around just a little bit longer, that would be so wonderful. Now, what I would like to suggest, if someone would like to actually speak up and ask a question, down the bottom, there is a little button that says reactions. And if you click on that, you can pop your hand up like this, like you raise your hand like that. And what that'll do is it'll pop you up into the top corner and we can see, and then we can see you there. So if anyone wants to directly ask a question of Charlie and Brenna while they're here, please go ahead now. Jane, nice to see you. This is Jane from Kenya. Hi, Jane. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I was struggling to unmute myself.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I love Charlie's voice, first of all. And I am just, this is very beautiful kind of conversation going on with Brenna and Charlie. And I was just asking, Charlie was talking about translating his whatever in different languages. Do you have anyone doing it in Swahili, Charlie?
No, but I'd love to. The only song in Swahili I have is tuna aina nyingi za ndizi tuzilinde na kuzipanda hatutaki zilizobadilishwa na saba tuna uhuru wa kuchagua. It's about bananas, but I'd love to sing more songs in Swahili.
And you are so good at that. How did you master that? Oh my God, my husband bites his tongue when he says one word in Swahili. Oh Lord, you can sing.
Please feel free to connect. I would love to do a version in Swahili. Let's exchange details.
I'll ask my daughter to get in touch with you if you give me your email or your contact so that she's a teacher working with kids. So she does a little bit of music and art and fashion and bringing into permaculture. So I think she'll be interested to work with you.
Excellent. So Charlie's put his email down below. Yeah. And I just wanted to say too that there are probably a dozen Swahili speakers in this call from lots of different places. And I wonder, and a number of them are actually music makers themselves. And so possibly there could be a bit of a collaboration. And Charlie and I have been talking for a while. It's kind of been a slow burn around a global permaculture music project. And maybe this could be kind of part of that too, like hooking in with...
Yeah, like a collabo with all the rest of the Swahili speakers that are here, and then they do a nice collabo in permaculture collabo. That would come out nice.
Yeah.
Because it's a very big language, isn't it? There's a lot of Swahili speakers in the world, I think. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, and spread quite far too. So fantastic. Thank you, Jane. So nice that you could be here. Lovely to see you. Emily, go ahead.
Hello. I'm Emily, currently in the UK. I work in theatre. I have done a lot of activist devised theatre and experimental theatre making, I guess. Without going too much in depth. And I just want to thank you both so much, or all of you, for coming today and talking. And Brenna, especially what you were talking about, how you don't, I guess in a way, how you don't want to preach to your audiences. You want to engage them and draw them in. And anytime we've started a theatre production, that's been our main focus of how can we make it entertaining and get our message across without the audience realizing they're being taught a lesson. And that's always the fun of play. So thank you again for that. What I wanted to ask Charlie and Brenna, and I guess Morag too, because I would imagine in permaculture you face similar challenges when it comes to funding. How, especially I know with music too, and finding the funding to at least get your work out to a larger audience. Can you talk a bit more? Or do you have any advice about the struggles with that?
Great question, Emily. And maybe throw it over to the two of you because, you know, well, actually all of us together have done lots of crowdfunding as a way to get funding for the work that we do. But I wonder whether, you know, you wanted to, like Patreon, and your work with crowdfunding for your albums. Do you want to just chat about that a bit? Because you've done really well in exploring this question.
Yeah, it's an important question. If we're going to encourage people to have ethical livelihoods, we have to show that that's sustainable on a financial level. We all live in the world. We all have expenses, so we need money to do things. And we don't want to be so consumed with trying to find the next part of our income that we actually can't do our best work. So, striving for something that's financially sustainable is important. My client work, where I get paid to do drawings for councils and books and stuff, it doesn't pay a ridiculous wage, but it pays enough for me. We currently live in a house truck in the forest, so we don't pay rent. So that was a big one, is taking that out of the equation. I know that's not possible for everybody, but it was possible for us, so we're doing that. And that's given us, as artists who do permaculture, an overlap that's not really known for its financial tidings, has allowed us to, I guess, really stay ethical in our choices of work. So client work funds the free stuff, that the images I showed you before are free, that I release online for people. And the other thing that Morag mentioned, which has been really great, is Patreon. So people pay a few dollars each per month, $3 or $5. They gain access to a whole bunch of really cool resources like videos and free things. And that helps support me to keep doing those free artworks online. So if people have used my artworks, downloaded them, shared them, used them in their courses, often they really want to give some sort of contribution, and Patreon's just served as a really great way to help that happen. And it just means every month I know that I get something instead of wondering, looking into the hazy future, will there be work again? So that's my answer. Charlie, you've got other experiences?
Yeah, well, I've always been pretty loose financially because I'm a musician. So, I've spent years of my life supporting myself by drumming on the streets for a few coins, and then, hey, that's the next week's food. But my go-to way of working is to just do it and then figure out a way to fund it later. I've been very fortunate to be successful in a few grants. If you have art grants available in your area, I'd suggest applying for them because that's what the money is allocated for. I've been given a few government grants to tour overseas. It's rare that music can sustain itself financially, but I'm in a very lucky position again to have had some funding and to have been paid for some gigs that have funded me to do other gigs. A lot of gigs I do for free, but then some pay, and I just balance it out. But with this translation project, I have recording gear. I'm lucky to have this place to use as a studio for a while. So I'm always of the philosophy that I'm just going to do it and then worry about how to make it happen later. I think that's a philosophy that's good to put out there because it comes back to that place of trust. And in permaculture, we have earth care, people care, and fair share. And if I really believe that if we're living by those principles and trying to bring that into the world, then there is some roll-on effect. So by trying to give something to my community, i.e. to the permaculture community, I do trust that there'll be support that comes back. And I know, in a way that I am in a very privileged position because I'm connected to a lot of people in the permaculture community, but at the same time, the more you kind of contribute, the more support there is as well. So it's one way of looking at it, but yeah, the nuts and bolts of cash in the hand is it's a little bit unknown at the moment. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are experiencing that.
I'll just quickly add to what Charlie's saying. When Charlie said that they stopped flying a few years ago before COVID made everyone stop flying, that was a huge decision financially for their band because they were booked in for world tours all over the place. They were on the up in the world touring scene, and to stop flying means saying no to all of that income and all of those potential connections. But being a permaculturalist, Charlie creatively used and responded to that change and said, how can I still make a living through my music? No one buys CDs anymore. Spotify's destroyed the online music scene. How do you make money? Oh, house concerts. So Charlie will actually go to somebody's house, normally a community garden or a permaculture site, an informal setting that has something to offer, and he'll play music there and sell some tickets to people who want to see that permaculture site, who've never been to that community garden. You tend to get local people coming, bringing a plate of food to share, having a chat, forming connections, and it actually pays better than the world tours, and it has so much more wealth in all of these other ways. So he creatively responded to that change, and thinking outside the box can really be the key to making a living off an ethical livelihood.
You've got to be creative. You just have to come up with more than one solution because, permaculture is about using and valuing diversity. You can't put all your eggs in one basket because if one of those baskets fails, then you don't have a plan B. And, in saying that, Brenna's just posted a link to Patreon, which is another really important way to fund the recording of my music. And so if any of you would like to be a member of that, I'm using that now instead of social media. So I'm not engaging really at all on Facebook or Instagram, except for very, basic announcements. But on Patreon, I'm trying to create more content and put out more music for people who want to support, from the grassroots level. So, many different options, and we just got to try them as we go, I suppose.
And I guess just as a sort of a final touch on that too, I know that you both are permaculture educators as well. So, as well as doing your artwork, part of your activism is also through education. And I think that's kind of like one of the eggs in your basket, I suppose, or one of the baskets that you're carrying as well. And I guess that helps somewhat, and you're trying to work towards creating more of that at the place that you're establishing now as a local regional centre. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This permaculture community used to teach permaculture way back 15, 20 years ago. And the guy that was doing that isn't here anymore. I mean, he's passed away, sadly. And his granddaughter is living here now and so interested in carrying on his legacy. And so she was just thrilled to bits when we came in and said, hey, can we live here and start teaching permaculture courses? She went, oh, finally. So yeah, that is, I guess, as you get more and more experience in whatever form of life you're doing, it opens up that possibility to share those learnings with other people. So it's not something that we were looking at when we first started this journey, but a few years in now, that opens up possibilities, and people are really ready to learn about permaculture and all aspects of sustainability, activism, regenerative living. Now is the time. So let's get the word out there in all the ways that we can.
Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today. And you know, the smiles that I've been watching on everyone's faces and the nods and the kind of the sense of like, yes, you know, like this is the kind of activism. This is the kind of way of being in the world that feels good, you know, like it feels like it's responding to all the things that are going on, but in a way that can help not just us in our own backyard, but us as a community. I really liked how you said something like it's not just our world, it's our world. And it's kind of like, I think about that too. It's not just our permaculture, it's our permaculture, you know, like it's a collective thing. So I thought maybe we could, as just people are leaving, we could go out with your song, which is the climate movement song, which is a collaboration between Charlie's music and Brenna's artwork in a kind of an animated form. Do you want to maybe just give a little bit of extra background to that while I pull it up, Charlie?
Yeah, and I just want to say a massive thanks to you, Morag, and to everyone who's come. It really is beautiful to see everyone and to remember that we are part of a global community, and that's been something that, you know, stepping back from social media and digital technology, I've kind of lost connection with. So it's really affirming to see you all here, and just to know that I am still creating something that people like, and you know that we're doing our part, and everyone here is doing their part. So yeah, I really want to thank you for that. This song is a bit of a manifesto. I was asked to define permaculture in a song once at a convergence in California, and I started writing some rhymes down, and it turned into this sort of very broad definition, which then became a bit of a message to the climate movement. And we put it out in 2020, just after, you know, all the school strikes and the Fridays for Future and XR and everything was really ramped up, and then sadly, you know, ramped down again with COVID. But yeah, this is a call to action, a call to practivism, so practical solutions, whether it's through art, whether it's through gardening, whether it's through whatever skills you have, to just do them and to bring your gift to the world and just offer it, and you never know what might happen. So yeah, thanks again. Thanks, Brenna.
Thank you. So we'll go out with this song, and just to pick up on a thread that you said there, Charlie, that we are now hosting also XR permaculture talks. So this is something that's happening. I'll let you know through the links that we send out as well. All right. So let me just try and do the sharing properly. Thank you so much, Brenna Quinlan and Charlie McGee, for being the most awesomest of guests today on this session. And thank you to all of you for being here and jumping over at the last minute into this new link. Well done for being so agile. So, all right, let's go.
Thanks, everyone. If you want to share that, especially before the upcoming Australian election, I've just posted the link in the chat.
Oh, beautiful. Excellent. And I'll share it again with all the replay, so you get all the links of everything that's been shared in the chat today. Thank you so much again. Take care. Have a wonderful evening, day, afternoon, wherever it is that you are in the world today. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
I'm so delighted that you could join us here for this session. Whether you're here live or you're watching this as a recording, feel free to share it widely. All the links that Charlie and Brenna shared during this session are in the show notes below. And remember to follow the links and subscribe to our Masterclass Club and receive notice of all upcoming events. And to find out more about our Permaculture Educators Program and the work that we do at the Permaculture Education Institute, please visit us here too in the links below. All right, take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye.
I'm gonna bring it back home to a simple piece of ground. Been talking about it till my mouth is dumb, but all I wanna do is make a deeper connection with some earth people fair. Yeah, I've been looking for my earth people fair, yeah. Well, show me where to find the earth people fair.